It's September 9th, 1978. The Ayatollah Khomeini calls for an uprising in the Iranian army. Warner Brothers president Jack Warner dies at 86. And on NBC, a new version of an old cartoon series premieres. Welcome to That 70s Review. Hello fellow time travelers, and welcome to That 70s Review, where we look at the shows we loved as kids and you're coming to love as adults to see if they hold up. And this time we're looking at The Fantastic Four.
It was the world's strangest accident while testing a new rocket ship. Our heroes were bombarded by mysterious cosmic rays from outer space. Though they crash-landed safely, the strange and powerful rays had changed each one of them, transforming their leader, Reed Richards, into the plastic-skinned Mr. Fantastic. Sue Richards into the Now You See Her, Now You Don't, Invisible Girl. And Ben Grimm into a mighty muscled powerhouse called The Thing. Now together with H.E.R.B.I.E the robot, the newest member of the group, they have become the greatest team of superheroes the world has ever known. The new Fantastic Four.
Now, there's a very specific reason I'm doing this video on the Fantastic Four right now. Mainly, I couldn't get my Tom Baker Doctor Who video started because I have so much to say that it's giving me writer's block. Oh, and there's a movie coming out or something? That's actually very welcome news, because the Fantastic Four's track record in live action is spotty, to put it bluntly. There's a low-budget movie from the 90s that's sort of okay. There are two big-budget movies from the 2000s that are also sort of okay. And then there's a big-budget version from the 2010s that is in no possible way okay. Luckily, the small screen has been much kinder to the FF. Even though they never appeared in a live-action TV series, there have been, fittingly enough, 4 different iterations of the team in animation. There's the highly regarded 1966 version by Hanna-Barbera, which ran for one season of 20 episodes. There's the somewhat well-regarded 1994 syndicated version that ran for 2 seasons of 26 episodes. And then there's the fantastic World's Greatest Heroes version that ran for 26 episodes between 2006 and 2010. And then there's the 1978 version that ran for 13 episodes. Yeah, that's the one we're looking at today. Now, as hesitant as I am as an adult to look back on this show, this was my Fantastic Four when I was a kid, and at the time I was really excited about it. I was already reading the comics at this point, and I always thought it was weird that Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, was nowhere to be seen, but I still loved the cartoon, and when it stopped airing I remember wondering what had happened to it, and later whether it had happened at all. My friends didn't remember it, and no one I knew had a VCR at that time, so how could I prove it? Luckily, there would be some references in later comics, especially those written and drawn by John Byrne, that would reassure me that no, it wasn't all a fever dream brought on by eating too many Hostess fruit pies. God, I miss those fruit pies. Even if my fellow young, nerdy, geeky friends remembered this show at all, they remembered it for one specific reason, which we will get to very soon, and absolutely nothing else. These days, when this version of the animated FF gets brought up, it's not talked about nearly as fondly as the other 3 animated series, though everybody remembers H.E.R.B.I.E, of course, as well they should. There are several reasons for this, but maybe we should start back at the beginning. In 1961, the comics industry wasn't dead, but it wasn't exactly healthy either. The heyday of horror comics of the 1950s had been thoroughly staked through the heart by Dr. Frederick Wertham and the Comics Code Authority, and superhero comics were quite literally for kids, and never presented their characters as if they were real human beings who just happened to put on costumes and fight crime. DC was still churning out Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman titles, of course, but their rival Marvel had to fall back on romance and sci-fi comics. Sometimes these were good, sometimes they were not good. Around that time, though, Marvel publisher Martin Goodman did direct his editor-in-chief Stan Lee to create a superhero team book after seeing the success that DC had had with its Justice League of America title. Now, it all depends on who tells the story, whether Stan Lee came up with the concept and artist Jack Kirby came up with the designs, or vice versa. Whoever came up with what, both men could take credit for coming up with the Fantastic Four, a title that was a bona fide hit when it reached newsstands in November of that year. And really, that's about as much as I want to talk about the authorship of the Fantastic Four. There are much better videos out there made about this subject than I could possibly do. The Fantastic Four was also innovative in that the team was essentially a family, one with all of the usual tensions that you'd likely see in such a family, even if they had superpowers. Marvel would start creating similarly humanized superhero characters, such as Spider-Man, the Hulk, and Iron Man, in the next few years, which led to massive success for the company. A few years later, Hanna-Barbera's agent, Cy Fisher, saw his son reading the comic and asked if he'd ever like to see it as a cartoon. I can just imagine that kid's reaction. The company bought the rights and pitched the series to ABC, where the show's 20 episodes would air again and again from 1966 all the way into 1970. By 1978, it was decided to bring the Fantastic Four back to the small screen, but a few things would be different. For one thing, co-creators Stan Lee and Jack Kirby would be directly involved with the series this time, alongside fellow comics writer Roy Thomas. For another, due to a rights snafu between Hanna-Barbera and
DePatie-Freleng
over which company would get to produce which series going to NBC that season, which was a choice between the Fantastic Four and the Godzilla animated series, DePatie-Freleng obtained the rights to the Fantastic Four, while Hanna-Barbera did the Godzilla series. And speaking of rights snafus, one of the most distinctive members of the Fantastic Four would not appear in the cartoon at all. Universal Pictures had optioned the character of Johnny Storm the Human Torch separately from the rest of the team, potentially for some movie project, so there would be no way to include him in this particular iteration. Over the years, this has led to the myth that Johnny wasn't included in the show because the network didn't want kids setting fire to themselves or others, which is just silly. Like that would stop any budding pyromaniac who wanted to set themselves on fire. To fill the hole left by Johnny's absence, Jack Kirby himself designed the robot which would become known as H.E.R.B.I.E, which stands for Humanoid Experimental Robot B-Type Integrated Electronics. And yes, that means they decided to include in this series one of those damn 70s robots. It's been a while since I've gotten to say that in a video. The voice cast was comprised of Mike Road, best known to animation fans as the voice of Race Bannon on Jonny Quest, as Reed Richards. Sue Storm, the Invisible Girl, as she was still called then, was voiced by Ginny Taylor, former head Musketeer and best known to animation fans as Jan on Space Ghost, among other roles. Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, was voiced by Ted Cassidy, best known as Lurch from the Addams Family, and something I didn't know until I started doing research for this video, he's also the voice of the narrator at the beginning of The Incredible Hulk.
The creature is driven by rage and pursued by an investigative reporter.
And now that I know that, I can't believe I didn't recognize his voice before. The one member of the voice cast who, as of this recording, is still with us and still working in voice acting is the legendary Frank Welker, doing the voice of H.E.R.B.I.E. Even if you don't recognize the name, you've definitely heard him before.
Highly unlikely, Optimus, as I am infused with their very might.
Soundwave superior, Constructicons inferior. Soundwave superior, Autobots inferior.
Alas, our kitten-class attack ships were no match for their mighty chairs.
Go right ahead, Chief. I'll make sure he gets the right message.
Call the lieutenant and tell him we have the Golden Galleon.
Like I said, you've definitely heard him before. After many notes from the network, including the usual prohibitions such as not being allowed to use guns, even ray guns, on screen, and Ben Grimm, whose signature phrase is, "It's clobberin' time," not being allowed to actually clobber anybody, the series premiered on September 9th, 1978, with Stan Lee's script A Monster Among Us. The show finished its first season after 13 episodes on December 16th, 1978. If you're in the right mood for it, this show can at times be fun, but you really have to be in the right mood for it. It doesn't help that the only place it got a complete DVD release was in the UK, and that version of it is very expensive these days. And it's also not available on streaming. By comparison, the 1967 show, while it's still tied up in legal issues, is still possible to find, and the other two animated series are available on Disney+. But this one isn't. And the only versions currently available are low-quality VHS ripped copies uploaded to either archive.org or to YouTube, if you can find them. My own source for the clips for this video is the archive.org versions, which is why the quality is so variable, and why in some cases it's downright terrible. In other words, it's not the easiest thing to seek this out and watch it, but is it worth it? I must admit, it really is difficult to say anything good about this show. It was a slog getting through the barely 6 hours that this series comprises, but given my love for it as a kid, which I'm sure others share, I went ahead and gave it a try. One strength of this version is that, despite the change to the team's lineup, it does get the essential core concept of the Fantastic Four absolutely right. If anything, it's closer to the comics version, albeit the 1960s comics version, due to the involvement of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Several episodes are direct adaptations from comics from that decade, and we'll talk about the issues that creates, no pun intended, later on. The voice actors also do a fair job of bringing their characters to life, with Ted Cassidy and Frank Welker doing MVP work as Ben and H.E.R.B.I.E. respectively. Two of the voice actors, Mike Road and Ginny Taylor, had worked on the 1960s series, though not as members of the team. For years afterwards, I have to admit, Reed Richards always sounded in my head like Race Bannon, and it's all because of this show. I also have to say that even though H.E.R.B.I.E. absolutely fits into the category of those damn 70s robots, he can still be a delight. His function on the team is very different than that of Johnny Storm, and at times it's even possible to forget that Johnny's not here. His interactions with Ben are among the highlights of the show, especially when Ben engages in the sort of robocentric insults that obviously would not have worked with Johnny. Otherwise, their chemistry is very much like Ben and Johnny. And, well, that's about it for the strengths, I'm afraid. The few things this show does right are far outweighed by the things it gets wrong, as we'll soon see.
Cool, the new Fantastic Four!
Don't forget the change.
Whoa, Dr. Doom is taking over the city!
Who's gonna stop me?
Thing!
Don't worry, kid. The Fantastic Four are on the job.
Blast him, Human Torch!
Clobberin time!
Mr. Fantastic!
Let's go for a spin, Doom.
Got him! Oh, Invisible Woman!
This is not over. The evil Dr. Doom is still on the loose. Better bring the Thing. His stomp and clobber sound in action is awesome. Bring on the Human Torch. His flame-on power defeats Doom's energy force. Flame on! Then stretch it to the limit with Bend and Stretch Mr. Fantastic. The Invisible Woman blasts back, and the Human Torch fires away. If shape-shifting Mr. Fantastic isn't enough to cut out evil, let Clobber and Crush Thing do his thing. Separate, they're fantastic. Together, they are the Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four action figures, each sold separately.
In my video about the return of the Planet of the Apes series, which you can find the link to at the end of this video, and I'd really suggest you go see it, I pointed out how, despite a few moments of absolute brilliance in the form of still images and detailed backgrounds, DePatie-Freleng's animation is just not up to the task. 3 years later, their work on this show has very few of those same moments of brilliance. There are many animation errors on this show, ranging from minor ones, like Sue's uniform glove disappearing, which I guess is appropriate given that she's the Invisible Girl, and Reed's eye color changing from shot to shot, to big ones, like whatever the hell's happening to Magneto's car in this scene. Mind you, if we look at any animated series from 1978, we're gonna turn up errors like this. No animated show from that era is perfect. But it's not a good thing when a show from 1978 looks worse than a show produced in 1966. And it's especially glaring when both shows are about the same characters. 75% of the same characters anyway. Looking at Hanna-Barbera's Godzilla show from the same year, it's clear that the animation there is just a touch, and I do mean just a touch, better than what we get here. So you have to wonder what it would have looked like if they'd gotten the chance to do the Fantastic Four again. Also, as much as Stan Lee's involvement with the series brought it somewhat closer to the comics than the previous iteration, it also gives us stories that would be more appropriate for a show made in the 60s than one made in 1978. In fact, one of the few markers to show this is even made in the 70s comes at the end of the Magneto episode, where Reed and Sue decide to go dancing at the disco, which is open downstairs in the Baxter Building. Not exactly Studio 54, but whatever. As a result, to paraphrase one review on IMDb, the dialogue sounds like what you would get if it were directly transcribed from a 1960s comic into a script meant to be read by real human beings.
The mysterious monster from outer space approaches the city bridge. His curiosity causes a trail of destruction.
This scene, which we filmed, shows the site where a power plant had vanished in South America. And here, on this map of the world, you can see where other plants have disappeared, all over the globe. No one has been able to find a single clue. Nothing but a single name, which men whisper in fear. The name of the Mole Man. Someone has to solve the mystery. Holy Hannah, there's our Special Four signal in the sky. That means the police want the help of the Fantastic Four for some sort of emergency.
This is far removed from what writer Marv Wolfman was doing with the comic being published in 1978 at the time. especially in terms of moving the Invisible Girl's characterization and power set to what it would eventually become in her slow but satisfying transformation into the Invisible Woman, and arguably the most powerful member of the team. Here, just as she was in the 1960s, Sue is still the weakest member of the team, needing to be rescued almost as often as she's able to hold her own. She does get a few standout moments, which I'll talk about in the must-watch episodes list, but they're not nearly as many as there should be. And even odder, we do get mentions of other Marvel heroes, Spider-Man specifically, but there are indications that he's a fictional character here.
Nuts. I wanted to watch Spider-Man tonight. Hey, did some wise guy steal my little Spider-Man flashlight?
Of course, we all know that there are comics written about the Fantastic Four in their own universe, and I'm sure that first clip is meant to be a sneaky reference to the Spider-Man series airing on another network, but it's still awfully jarring. You would think that Stan Lee writing for the show would mean it gets other details from the comics right, but again, it doesn't, as we will see in more detail when we look at the must-avoid episodes list. In the broadest terms, there are characters who don't act the way they do in the comics, sometimes to the point of gloriously unintentional hilarity. And yes, Magneto meme fans, you know what I'm talking about. I will briefly say that another disadvantage of the show is its music, but I can't actually play any of it for you properly. There's been no isolated soundtrack released for this show, which is why this video is using music cues from the various other Fantastic Four projects out there. That, and they have some fantastic music. To get an idea of what the music for this show sounds like, you'll simply have to listen to some of the clips I include here, or if you're really brave, watch the episodes, and you'll see how bad can actually get. Despite all these negatives, there are still some episodes that are just about worth watching, and they at least give the viewer some sense of what the show is like at its best, and even some glimpses of what the show could have been. Consider these more in the category of can watch rather than must watch. I will admit it was really rough coming up with 3 of these, even for a series this short, but here are the ones I personally think you might enjoy. In The Impossible Man, a nameless alien from the planet Pop-Up comes to Earth for a vacation, and unfortunately the very first people he runs into is a small criminal gang who trick him into stealing for them. By the time the Fantastic Four gets involved, they have to convince the Impossible Man, or simply Impy, that his friends are really using him. And by the way, the quality of this version is all that's available out there. And this is even the version that was released on DVD. Or maybe it just escaped. I have a confession to make. I love the Impossible Man. He's one of my favorite characters from the FF comic, so I was always going to immediately gravitate to this episode. It's also one of the episodes based on one of the comics, in this case, issue number 11, and the episodes that adapt the comic stories are mostly better than the original stories.
Mostly.
This one even improves upon the original story a bit by adding the angle of the criminal trio, gang. The original simply had Impy wreaking havoc until Reed tells everybody to stop paying attention to him, at which point he gets into a huff and leaves. Oh, if only we could get rid of everybody who disrupts our lives by simply ignoring them. Impy's various forms are a lot of fun, as is the Fantastic Four's plot to create a fake bank to lure him in, which is just hilarious. I also love Frank Welker's take on Impy's voice, and whenever I read the character in the comics, it's this voice that I hear.
You'll never believe what happened to me in there. This man didn't want to give me any cash, so
We'd better be moving along now, Impy baby.
Of course. Besides, I'm still hungry.
And I absolutely adore the fact that it's Sue who tricks Impy into thinking he's losing his powers and must leave the planet. She doesn't get enough to do in this series, so this is a very welcome change. Mind you, the episode is far from perfect. We get the usual off-model shots, the grating 60s era dialogue.
Good heavens, I must be going mad. He's changed into a green vacuum cleaner. I don't believe what I'm seeing.
And, at least in the copy I have, one dubbing problem that is absolutely bizarre.
Fantastic Four!
Well, what do you know? These jerks got 20/20 vision.
You're finished, Grogan. We can take you in now for planning to get rid of Impy.
Except for that last one, these flaws are all to be expected. It's still a Stan Lee teleplay after all, even if it is probably his best one. That being said, this is one of the most watchable episodes in the entire series, and it's also a lot of fun. In The Frightful Four, 4 of the Fantastic Four's old foes, well, 3 of them, and one of Spider-Man's, technically, form a group to bring down the team.
Nuts. I wanted to watch Spider-Man tonight.
Oh wait, that's right, Spider-Man's fictional in this universe, isn't he? Okay, all 4 of them are the Fantastic Four's foes. But this one has a teleplay by Bob Stitzel and Bob Johnson. Both were also writers for the Godzilla cartoon, among other things. Because of that, or maybe even despite that, this is another enjoyable episode. For one thing, Ben and Herbie aren't bitching at each other nearly so much in this one, which frankly they do a lot of in every single episode, and Ben even comes to Herbie's defense, which is something he would obviously do if this were Johnny. For another, this episode shows off a lot of designs that Kirby did specifically for this series, and some of the scene layouts, such as this shot of the Fantasticar flying over the city, are really very good. This adaptation also ignores some of the messier parts of the original story, such as why Medusa was ever a member of the team, since in this version of the Fantastic Four she's a villain for some reason, until she lends Sue her dog Lockjaw in the final episode, but hey, we can't expect perfect continuity, can we? Speaking of Sue, she again gets in on the action this time, rather than needing to be rescued. And finally, there's my favorite scene in which the wizard gasses the team to get them angry enough to fight each other. Again, it's not a perfect episode. Herbie's in trouble in one scene, and the music that plays in the background just doesn't reflect the peril that he's in.
Over there! Cannot compute!
What's the matter with him?
He seems to be trapped in some sort of force field.
Cannot compute! Cannot compute!
You see what I mean about the music? And whoever decided to make the Sandman sound like the Tasmanian Devil really needed to be fired.
Invited 2 others. Welcome, Sandman.
But this one's far enough away from the source material to have some real surprises, and it's almost a shame the show didn't get renewed so we could see the Frightful Four come back. Almost. In Calamity on the Campus, Reed's being given an honorary degree from a college that appears to be his alma mater, so why they need to give him an honorary degree is beyond me. And one of his former professors has created a robotic dragon man who is inexplicably going berserk. This is yet another adaptation of issue number 35, but this time Stan Lee's original script is revised by Roy Thomas, and it's a slightly more talky episode this time, but since it's Thomas rather than Lee doing the writing, the dialogue isn't nearly as bad. Herbie goes his longest without a line here, but when he does get to talk, it's actually kind of funny.
Herbie,
With your computer powers, can you help me with my term paper on point mutations?
Oh, I really don't know all that much about the subject, lads. Of course I know that point mutations occur randomly during the replication of DNA molecules, but they can also be induced by ionizing radiation, by elevated temperatures, and by a variety of chemical reagents. Then, of course, they also...
College students using AI to cheat on their schoolwork. Some things never change, do they? While the Dragon Man himself is not nearly as impressive as he was in the comic, there are a few bits taken directly from that story, such as Ben's hilarious scrimmage session with the college football team. Did he superglue them all together somehow? And it's just as funny seeing the way Sue breaks it up. I also, for some reason, titter like a little girl every time I hear the sound Ben makes when he falls into the lake.
Yay! 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 Yay!
Again, not a perfect episode. The assistant behind all the shenanigans sounds nothing like the way he's drawn, and his voice makes it so absolutely clear that he's the bad guy, he might as well be wearing a t-shirt with the word villain on it.
Go on, Reed Richards. Rejoice in your tiny victory. But soon I shall still destroy you with the power of Dragon Man.
Did you hear that? That excellent was excellent.
There are also some odd choices made in the animation, and others that make you wonder if they ever had a style sheet for this show. And maybe you can tell me in the comments, but was there ever a time when the Fantastic Four flew coach in the comic book? This is still another fun episode, though, and Ben and Herbie's last scene together is just cute. Unfortunately, the rest of the show is often relatively dull, or cringy, or both, while a very few episodes are outright dumb, if not dire. If you want to shorten your watch time, here are some you should just skip. And again, this time, it was hard to narrow it down to just 3. In the final victory of Doctor Doom returns to wreak havoc on the Fantastic Four and on the entire country. Wow, that sounds familiar. Now, I wanted to like this episode, I really did. This is the second episode to feature Doom in this series, and that makes sense since he's obviously such a big villain for the team that he's appeared in almost every version. And that first episode is actually one of the better ones in the series, despite not appearing on the must-watch list. It helps that it's almost a direct one-to-one adaptation of his first appearance in the comics, which means we're treated to the image of Herbie dressing up as a pirate. So it has its moments. So does this one, but they're the wrong kind of moments. There's just so much here that's wrong. For one thing, the show makes the bizarre decision to have Doom's mouth move when he talks, which leads to some truly derpy-looking moments. The plot itself is also odd, especially when Doom decides to discredit the team. He disguises himself as their elevator operator, because when you're saving the world, who has time to deal with HR matters like remembering who you hired to operate your damn elevator? He then implants tracer discs on them, which allows him to then have them followed by his Doom balloons. Yes, you heard me right. The team members each get humiliated by these big balloons following them around. Now, I got the impression from Doom's dialogue that each balloon would look like the member of the team that it was following around, but all of them look like the Thing, so I guess the animation budget didn't stretch to that. No pun intended. Doom then proceeds to take out the power for the entire country, which might actually be threatening if we hadn't had the Doom balloons first. Reed discovers how Doom's been following them with the tracers, and he alters H.E.R.B.I.E circuits to confuse the detectors. Reed? Now that you know these discs are on your hands, couldn't you just, well, take them off? Reed then challenges Doom to a brain wrestling contest to prove who's got the strongest intellect. Unfortunately, it's nothing like the mind-bending contest we got in Doctor Who, though it is a cool Jack Kirby design. Unfortunately, it's right around this point that the animation gets really janky. It looks like even Ben doesn't know what's going on here. Doom wins, but it turns out it's a crafty trick on Reed's part, and yet it's enough for Doom to simply abandon his plans and go back home. That's almost as stupid as what happens in another episode on this list, but we'll get there soon enough. Seriously, there's only one good thing in this episode, and that's when Sue gets a badass moment in which she breaks up what she thinks is a criminal transaction over a gun. Except it turns out to be two toy manufacturers discussing a new product. Because of course, where else would two toy manufacturers meet to discuss a toy gun except in an alleyway in New York? Otherwise, this episode has it all. Downright awful animation, especially in the background characters. Seriously, what is up with their faces here? It's like they're made out of melted wax. Dodgy voice acting, both from the extras.
The lights! What happened to the lights?
The TV stopped working.
So did the radio.
I can't fix your vacuum, lady. There's no electricity. The whole Air Force is grounded. Nothing will fly.
And from the main characters.
It can only belong to Dr. Doom.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. And whatever you do, do not let an epileptic watch H.E.R.B.I.E signal flare at full speed. It's a good thing so few kids were watching this by this point, or we might have gotten that whole Porygon incident several years earlier. Oh, and that joke at the end.
Yeah, but what me and H.E.R.B.I.E want to know is, what do we do for an encore, huh?
Honey, do you want to put them down? Or should I? In Medusa and the Inhumans, the Fantastic Four meets the Inhumans, a secret race bent on ruling the world and having their first run-in with the leader of the Inhumans, Medusa. Yeah. If you know anything about the comics, you know that about 50% of that sentence that I just read is absolutely wrong. This episode is based extremely loosely on the Inhumans' first appearance in issue number 45. There, the humans are in hiding and ruled by Black Bolt. Here, they're entirely villainous, ruled by Medusa, and there's no Black Bolt at all. Even if you're not a stickler for continuity, like some of us are, there's not much to recommend this episode. The Inhumans never give a reason for wanting to rule the world, they just do. Medusa mind controls a smitten Ben into following her instructions, a trope this show will use again, and better, in, well, the very next episode, where Ben is smitten by a beautiful woman again. And how does H.E.R.B.I.E cure him? By having him slip on a banana peel. Oh, my sides hurt. Not from laughing, probably from trying to suppress the vomiting. This episode has some of the biggest issues with that 60s style dialogue we've talked about, in which the characters describe what they're about to do and then talk about it as they do it. This time we have the Inhumans about to be attacked by Reed and Sue. They see the danger coming, they comment on the danger, and then they comment on how they were defeated.
Are they mad? They're heading right toward the gun.
No, they're dodging it just in time. But the missile was too close. It can't pull up in time.
It's impossible. They dodged the stun beam, the homing missile,
and they wrecked the gun.
The other Inhumans are just as bad. Karnak is easily defeated when his arm is rendered invisible by Sue, and he freaks out and runs away, like you do. Our heroes end up doing the same thing. Crystal keeps them from leaving with a storm, then the storm goes away, and they just talk about why they can't leave because of the storm.
Amazing! The storm has ended as quickly as it had begun.
Just as I suspected. It happened too suddenly to be a natural phenomenon.
Well, can't you ever just speak plain English, huh?
Reed, does this mean we're free to leave now?
I'm afraid not, Sue. They must have something else in store for us.
But it's the resolution to this episode that is the dumbest. Reed convinces Medusa not to take over the world by showing her how much the world outside sucks.
This is a street scene during rush hour in any typical large city in the outside world. This is what humans have to do in order to get food to eat. And this is something called pollution, which is one of the biggest problems to plague mankind. That's just a small sample of what life is like in the outside world. I could also show you traffic problems, unemployment, strikes, slums, and poverty.
Good thing we've got Reed around, isn't it? Because CNN headline news is a few years off yet.
But this is not the last you will hear of Medusa.
Yeah, we know. You'll be lending the team your dog soon for some reason or other. I tell you, this show has continuity like a fine wine that's been left out in the sun for hours in a plastic cup. In The Menace of Magneto, the Master of Magnetism, Magneto, oh my god, that was so hard to say. The Master of Magnetism, Magneto, attacks the Fantastic Four in order to become their new leader. Yes, really. I know, just hear me out. I honestly thought about putting this episode on the must-watch list, simply because it's actually the worst of the worst, and given its reputation, it does have to be watched to be believed rather than outright avoided. All that being said, there's simply nothing good about this one. From the weird character interpretations, to the janky animation, to that ending. You would think that Stan Lee, of all people, would be able to give us an accurate version of Magneto, but for whatever reason, this ain't it. For one thing, he's not a mutant in this episode. The word mutant never gets a mention in the whole series. I don't know if the X-Men were under any rights embargoes at the time, such as the Human Torch was, but even mentioning mutants probably would have necessitated at least a glimpse of them, and this show just doesn't go that deep. Mind you, they had time to introduce us to the Inhumans, or most of them, but whatevs. Because of all this, Magneto is simply a thug who happens to have magnetic powers, which he uses to drive around in this weird-ass car. That's where he gets into a fight with a gas station attendant and has a weird moment.
Tell me how to reach the famous Baxter Building.
It's a long way from here. You'd better get some gas.
Nobody tells me what to do. Besides, fuel is for lesser men. My vehicle needs no gas.
You're putting me on. Every car needs gas.
You witless young fool. This is not every car, and nobody may dare contradict me. For when they do, I get angry. When I get angry, things begin to happen.
No, it's impossible.
To me, nothing is impossible. I can do anything. And if you still don't believe me...
I believe you!
Seriously, what's even happening right there? Arriving at the Baxter Building, he insists on challenging Reed to a duel for leadership of the Fantastic Four, and amazingly, not only does Reed accept, he loses the duel, and he allows Magneto to take over the team. And you thought those times when Magneto became leader of the X-Men were jarring. Upon taking over, Magneto tells the team that he knows of a bank robbery about to happen, and the way he proposes they will prevent it is to steal the money themselves so the thieves have nothing to steal. You can already tell where this is going, right? But Reed is aware of Magneto's motives the whole time, and the way he defeats Magneto is by convincing Magneto that his powers are gone by threatening him with a gun, which Magneto, for some reason, can't affect. But the gun is made out of wood, and that's the clever part. Here's the dumb part. Rather than wait until a dejected master of magnetism is carried off by the police to reveal to the team and the audience how he succeeded, Reed tells Magneto after the police arrive to carry him off. Police, who presumably have metal guns. Yeah. Really good thing Magneto is so broken up over losing his powers, or else he might have, realized he could escape at any time. If you do a Google search for the phrase Magneto wooden gun, the results are often more intentionally hilarious than this ending is unintentionally hilarious. And then Reed and Sue go off to the disco, yada yada yada. Honestly, if there's any joy to be taken from this show, it has to be taken from the show's absolutely stupidest moments, and unfortunately has a lot of those to choose from. The show would end on December 16th, 1978, with another adaptation from the comics, this time featuring Blastar, the Living Bomb Burst, which is also the title of the episode. Yeah, this is the one I kept harping on, in which Medusa lends Lockjaw to the Fantastic Four, even though she's supposed to still be a villain. It strays far away from the source material, and both Blastar and Lockjaw look just terrible. It also says something about the corners cut on this show, that this episode features a scene from the Frightful Four episode just 4 weeks previously, with the exact same dialogue. But again, by this point, few enough people were watching that probably nobody noticed. The show would then go into reruns for a while, but it would not be renewed for a second season. So, what does the new Fantastic Four rate? I'd give it 2 out of 5 H.E.R.B.I.Es. A show called The New Fantastic Four should have presented something fresh and interesting in comparison to the 1966 version that necessitated putting new in the title in the first place. But there's very little in this version that's new or fresh or even interesting, apart from H.E.R.B.I.E, of course. Despite 12 years' distance between this show and the original animated series, the animation hasn't really improved, and at times it's actively worse. A lot of that is down to being done by a completely different animation company, but it is 12 years later. The animation should be somewhat better. The writing is somehow less engaging rather than more so, despite having the comic's own creators involved this time. And if anything, having Stan Lee taking such an active role in writing for the show means it's actually stepping backwards a bit. It feels more like a 60s show than the 60s show did, and not in a good way. Stan Lee himself was reportedly unhappy with the results. According to the book Think Pink, the story of DePatie-Freleng, he wrote privately to NBC producer Margaret Loesch, who would later become president and CEO of Marvel Productions, about how unhappy he was with the show and said he wanted to make changes to the second season, though these were not specified. It wouldn't matter anyway, as the second season was never coming, for a couple of reasons. For one thing, Ted Cassidy, the voice of the Thing, died in January of 1979 at the age of 46. So even if the series had continued, they would have needed a new voice actor for the Thing. But more importantly, the president of NBC, Fred Silverman, thought the show was a low-quality production and wanted it off the network. Thus, no second season, and the shortest Fantastic Four animated series to date. Had Hanna-Barbera been allowed to go forward with doing this series rather than the Godzilla one, and had the scripts been allowed to be at least half as inventive as the ones from the previous series, we'd probably be talking about this show with a bit more fondness. Many fans still do, though. The late rapper MF Doom sampled audio from the show in some of his tracks, and if you look at his name and his photo, the reason's probably obvious. And the show itself has also joined its earlier incarnation in being spoofed as part of the Marvel mashup series on Disney XD in 2012. Almost all of those are available on YouTube, and they are hilarious.
Why are there no landing wheels on the Fantastic Car?
You said you wanted to save money.
I was referring to your clothing shopping.
Oh, that's right. Everything's my fault.
Well, I mean, that last dress, that was way too much.
It went with the shoes that I just bought.
That's a bit of a stretch.
Oh, everything's a stretch to you.
Also, as a result of discussions had during the making of this show, Marvel decided it was time for them to get into the animation game directly. So they worked with DePatie-Freleng to form Marvel Productions, which in some form or another would produce some of the most beloved animated series of the next 2 decades. And of course, H.E.R.B.I.E's presence in the series led to his eventual appearance in the comics. The little robot made his first appearance in Fantastic Four number 209, a few months after the show was over. Writer Marv Wolfman even gave H.E.R.B.I.E's origin in the comics as Reed's having made the robot to replace Johnny in an animated series they'd all signed contracts for, but Johnny was out of town. Yes, this animated series is canon in the Fantastic Four universe as an animated series. And of course, he's in the new movie too, which admittedly is just awesome for us 70s kids. Apart from all this, though, the only real legacies left behind by the new Fantastic Four series itself are a memorable example of those damn 70s robots, the realization by later creators that unless you have the Human Torch, you simply don't have the Fantastic Four, and a meme that's become more famous than the show itself. And that's it for this edition of That 70s Review. In the meantime, if you want to see more of this sort of thing, give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, do that thing with the bell that you do so well, and tell me in the comments what shows from the 1970s that you would like me to cover. Till next time, stay safe and stay groovy.